of the Christian far right that I've not seen fully exposed yet. Here he is, rocking the fucking chest piece, the Templar, the Jerusalem cross, okay, and his other Deus Vult tattoo. Pete Hegseth wrote a book, okay. Here are some thoughts from Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense. Fox's Pete Hegseth, Brian Kilmeade, criticize American veterans who apply for every government benefit they qualify for. Okay. Hegseth tars veterans using all their government benefits as dependent, while Kilmeade suggests they lack personal integrity. Fox's Pete Hegseth. Hold on. Okay. Fox's Pete Hegseth. Kim Jong-un probably doesn't love being the guy who has to murder his people all day long. Hegseth. Kim wants to meet with Dennis Rodman and loves NBA basketball and loves Western pop culture. Fox, I mean, I don't know why that's not that bad. I don't really give a shit about that. Fox's Pete Hegseth. There's merit in a preemptive strike against North Korea. That's not good. Fox's Pete Hegseth urges Trump to take credit for solving the global warming because of cold temperatures from bomb cyclone. At least 22 people have died from freezing weather event. Here's Pete Hegseth in his book. Just like Christian crusaders who pushed back on the Muslim hordes in the 12th century, American crusaders will need to muster the same courage against Islamists today. Good thing for all the liberals who also feel this way. They get their wishes, you know? So that's cool. I fully understand the distinction between peaceful Muslims and Islamist Muslims. I have many dear friends who are Muslim, including Texas Omar, his family and colleagues at Fox News. They are wonderful people working and fighting in their mind to save a religion besieged by radicals. I don't agree with that assessment, but they love America, so I respect them dearly. He's saying that even someone who is fighting against radical Islam is still Muslim, so obviously they're still bad, but at least they love America. That's what he's saying. But they are under siege. Next to the communist Chinese and their global ambitions, Islamism is the most dangerous threat to freedom in the world. It cannot be negotiated with, coexisted with, or understood. It must be exposed, marginalized, and crushed, just like the Christian crusaders who pushed back the Muslim hordes in the 12th century. American crusaders will need to muster the same courage against Islamists today. Islamists and even mainstream Muslims use aggressive tactics to exploit American tolerance as utter weakness in order to achieve accommodations. Bro, I just want to say something here, but this is literally, is this destiny or is this the upcoming defense secretary, you know? The person in charge of the Department of Defense. Sounds exactly like my naysayers. Sounds exactly like a lot of the people who have cast me aside as a dangerous Islamist extremist. Maybe they're excited at this, despite the fact that they were so scared of the Trump administration. Unlike me, though, you know? Islamists and even mainstream Muslims use aggressive tactics to exploit American tolerance as utter weakness in order to achieve accommodations that would never otherwise be tolerated. I'm not talking about on the battlefield. I'm talking about in our classrooms, city councils, and social media. Simply put, their sheer insistence, the specter of violence, and their passionate beliefs lead many American citizens to retreat on demands for assimilation to American principles. A reality we've seen powerfully in Minnesota among a large Somali refugee population. Muslims insist, making others feel as though they are under the gun or somehow wrong. Bigots, the leftists cry, for fear of public reprisal and cries of intolerance against anyone who questions their religious demands. Most Americans simply cave into a stubbornly insular Muslim community. Here's Pete Hegseth praising Trump for wanting to ban Muslims from the country. Hegseth wrote that Trump was right to call for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. As usual, President Trump has been and continues to be willing to say and do the things most American political leaders would never have the guts to do. In December 2015, candidate Donald Trump called for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. He was right then, and once in office, tried to implement a more tailored ban from certain countries with large populations of Islamists. It was tied up in the courts until going into partial effect. With a win in the courts, he now plans to expand it. The result, it's 2020, and half the country, more than half of elected officials, and almost everyone in the media still have no idea what the hell is going on, except for President Trump. Our leaders still don't take the threat of Islamism seriously. Some of his excerpts are insane. One of the best in the business, U.S. candidate John James, is a big fan of anti-Muslim bigot Pete Hegseth. Hegseth pushed an anti-Muslim rhetoric on Fox News in February 2016 about Hamtramck, Michigan, which has a Muslim majority. Hegseth pushed fears about the assimilation and integration of Muslims. In May 2017, Hegseth criticized the then Minneapolis Mayor Betsy Hodge for giving her State of the City address at a mosque. He stated, "This is the left doing everything they can to fall over themselves to fawn over a new community." In May 2018, Hegseth said of France, "I hate to put it this way, but I think it's true. They've got a slow motion 9/11 happening in their borders in France. Demography matters. Muslims are having 2.6 kids, whereas French-born folks are having 1.6 kids. Muslim French people are not considered French in the eyes of Pete Hegseth. Muslims are not considered American in the eyes of Pete Hegseth. This man will now be in charge of the American Defense Department." Okay? Hegseth is also a supporter of Florida Republican congressional candidate Laura fucking Loomer, who has described herself as a proud Islamophobe, has said, much like Destiny, by the way, has said that she didn't care about the anti-Muslim mass shooting in Christchurch, New Zealand, and has stated that she's in favor of more migrant deaths. Hegseth has repeatedly defended Loomer, said that he hopes she wins and wins big, and posted a now-deleted tweet containing a donation link to her campaign. Hegseth makes his anti-Muslim views clear in his book, American Crusade, which was released in May. In it, he wrote, "Just like the Christian crusaders who pushed back the Muslim hordes," we already covered that part. Hegseth also warned about Muslim birth rates in states like Michigan and the number of Muslim candidates who have won political office across the U.S. Today, Europe is sort of waking up to the fact that it has been invaded again, culturally and demographically. According to the Pew Research Center, the Muslim population in Europe, excluding Turkey, was estimated at 30 million in 1990, at 44 million in 2010, and is expected to grow to 58 million by 2030. The number is growing, while birth rates among native Europeans have all dropped. What is the distinction between Muslims who have migrated to Europe or Muslims who were living in Europe versus the native European-born people? Racism. That's it. There is no difference functionally or fundamentally between a Muslim person or a Christian person living in a fucking European nation state, okay? Unless you're a fucking Nazi. Unless you are out of your goddamn mind. And Pete Hegseth certainly is out of his goddamn fucking mind. Many European countries would have declining populations if not for Muslim immigration. Combine these factors over time, and this is what you get. In 2019, the most popular name in England for newborn boys was Muhammad. Could the same thing happen in America? Of course. With enough leftism and enough time, anything is possible for Islamists. He wrote this in his book, by the way. I like that he is making no distinction between the Islamists that he was afraid of versus all Muslims, by the way. Seems like he doesn't care about the fundamentalists, but instead cares about the undesirables, which he thinks all Muslims are, versus, you know. Oh yeah, by the way, these are some of his wonderful tattoos. Yesterday, Trump announced he's nominating Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. Hegseth is a prominent Fox News personality and a veterans advocate, but he also has strong ties to the Christian far right that I've not seen fully exposed yet. Here he is, rocking the fucking chest piece, the Templar, the Jerusalem cross, okay, and his other Deus Vult tattoo. Christian far right is a coalition between different Christian movements bound together by aggressive theologies and often, but not always, white supremacy. This is the extreme militant end of the spectrum of what is popularly called Christian nationalism. Theologically and socially, there are at least three distinct major strands of the American Christian far right today, with lots of smaller ones too. Radical traditionalist Catholic networks and influencers, Opus Dei, etc. This is the world of J.D. Vance, not my area of expertise, says Matthew D. Taylor, who is a senior scholar at ICJS Baltimore. Okay? You have the born-again Christians and the Catholics and all those fucking people. These are the tradcaths, okay? J.D. Vance is the person that represents this field. independent charismatic celebrity and spiritual warfare and apostolic networks, often simplistically labeled as the NAR. This is my area of expertise, says Matthew D. Taylor. He's, of course, talking about the Christian movement, the independent spiritual warfare, the apocalypse is now, guys. These are the evangelicals for the most part. Okay. The third major strand of the Christian far right is the Reformed Reconstructionist networks of churches and leaders. This is called the so-called Theobros, usually bearded, chauvinistic, hyper-Calvinist male influencers. These are the circles Hegseth travels in. Here's an article I wrote earlier this year describing the origins of these two Protestant Christian supremacist movements, independent charismatic /NAR and Reformed Reconstructionists and their agendas. The Reformed Reconstructionists tend to emphasize post-millennial eschatology, i.e. building the kingdom of God on earth, theonomy, applying biblical law to every society, alternative education, homeschooling or classical XN academies, exclusive male leadership and masculinity. In 2023, the profile of Hegseth for local Texas magazine, Christian magazine, he describes reading Doug Wilson, the godfather today of the Reform Reconstructionist movement, sending his kids to a classical Christian academy, finding fortification of brotherhood. Hegseth apparently attends Pilgrim Hill Reform Fellowship in Tennessee, led by Brooks Potiger, the pastor, and Joshua Hames, pastoral intern. This is a CREC church, part of the denomination founded by Doug Wilson. Hegseth has been a guest on Hames and Potiger's podcast, Reformation Red Pill. Doesn't get much more far-right Reconstructionist than that, and as recently as last month was promoting their podcast. Last year, Hegseth also promoted an Advent devotional published by Hames and Potiger's Forge Press. Like, these guys are... I just want you to understand, like, these guys, you know, when they talk about, like, Islamist fundamentalists, like, they're Christian fundamentalists, okay? I know a lot of people growing up in the United States of America have no capacity to see this, and you always have an endless amount of monolithizing of Muslims, and you never have the same, like, you have the capacity to dissect Christian nationalism as a separate thing, but you have to understand, like, these guys are basically the same as fucking Al-Qaeda, okay? This is Christian Sharia law, okay? And I mean that in the way that, like, Westerners understand Sharia law, okay? These guys are looking for a practical application of Christian Sharia, okay? They are insane fundies, insane fundamentalists. And they are closer to seizing power than ever before. Now, of course, there's always been a pick of the litter approach to Christian fundamentalism and American power that's always existed. You have the family, you have these, like, crazy fucking church groups that every presidential candidate and even Democrats and Republicans alike go and basically kiss the ring of. But you just need national prayer breakfast, shit like that. But these guys are some of the most loyal champions of the cause and are pretty open about it, like J.D. Vance, for example, right? That's why he came across as gross in all the podcast appearances that he made. And yeah, they're absolutely fucking psychotic, rabid, monstrous pieces of shit. Could the same thing happen in America when he's talking about Muslim immigration? Okay. With enough leftism and enough time, anything is possible for Islamists. I have reported extensively on Fox News. Certain cities in my home state of Minnesota have started to look much different thanks to the overwhelming and intentional Muslim immigration. What started with good intentions, see Somali Omar in Chapter 1, and peaceful refugees eventually evolved into insular communities, internationally funded mosques, welfare fraud, culture clashes, and radicalization. Then, as Muslims' birth rates have grown alongside their political influence, local tolerant populations have made concessions. Critics are called racist. Crimes are hidden from the public. And the European cycle has begun. Now, every single thing he's saying here is insane, right? It's not correct. There is no fucking, like, crimes being hidden. Okay? He's just being a racist and hallucinating something that is not happening. But it doesn't matter with enough people who also are, in Reformed Calvinism, what Hexit is, followers believe in predestination, that they are called by God to the afterlife and others are not, no matter what they do. It's extreme and goes far beyond typical American Protestantism, where you can earn the afterlife simply by believing in Jesus. He likely believes in a violent apocalypse-style culling of the masses where most people go to hell. Isn't that crazy that we have so many prominent, very active, completely insane anime-style religious ideologies in America, and there are tens of millions of people who actively believe in it. And while their numbers are dwindling, their influence at the tippy top has not. As a matter of fact, their influence has become more prominent, I would say, within the Republican Party. That is what's so crazy about this, is that while church attendance is going down, okay, and more people find themselves to be agnostic or atheist and are self-reporting as agnostic or atheist, or not firmly committed to a theoretical or practical application of Christianity, these guys have gained more power, more influence. It is crazy. Okay? And when I say anime style, I literally believe it. So many of these guys that are committed believers believe in this like insane apocalyptic notion. Like evangelical Protestants, which we talk about quite frequently, believe that, the rapture is going to happen. And in order for the rapture to happen, the events that must unfold beforehand is that all the chosen sons and daughters of God, Jews, go to Israel and maintain that land so that Jesus can come back to earth and fight the devil and his army in Megiddo. Okay? That is a real thing that tens of millions of Americans unironically believe. Okay? This is why they are very firm and committed supporters of Israel, for the record. If you're wondering why so many fucking anti-Semitic guys in the deep South that are, they got pro-Israel bumper stickers and shit on their King Rancher trucks next to their fucking truck nuts, that is the reason. Okay? Thankfully, we are behind the trends in Europe. Our two oceans, barriers to refugee invasions, and traditional Christian fabric have insulated us well, but we are losing them quickly. American leftists insist on pursuing the very same policies that led to the cultural invasion in Europe. The Muhammad thing wasn't even real, I don't think, by the way. I don't know why they just like ran with that, but who cares? The unholy alliance between leftists and Islamists means, by the way, this is like what's going on. Islamagauche in France and Islamofascism in places like the UK, like what they call it, is a total. It's basically Judeo-Bolshevism, but now instead of Jews being the outgroup that fascists used to point to, and some still do, the outgroup now is Muslims. Okay? Islamo-leftism is what a lot of these new fascists push for. Islamo-Marxism in India. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. In France, it's Islamo-Gauchisme. Yeah. Islamo-Communism. On the one hand, by the way, the enemy is both weak and strong, for the record, just so you understand. That's always like the same principle. On the one hand, Nazis used to say the Jews control the banks and the media and yada, 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 and destroying the moral fabric of society, while simultaneously they were saying that they're like, all socialist and that they're all, formative members of the working class. Same principle holds here. On the one hand, they'll say, these guys have values that are at odds with Western civilization. They're too barbaric. They're too backwards. Look at the way they treat women. Ironically enough, they want to treat women that way, the Christians, okay? The Christian nationalists, the Christian fascists, right? But they also will say that you guys are fucking woke and leftist. Okay? They're both simultaneously pushing a trans agenda, okay, a woke agenda alongside the left, but they are also incredibly barbaric, incredibly backwards. It makes no sense. Non-assimilation, the erosion of national allegiance, and the toleration of the intolerable has left the door open for Islamists to establish a foothold in our country. In November 2019, 26 Muslim candidates won elected office in the United States. Muhammad is now a top 10 boys' name in America. What will it be in 2030? Islam equals peace narrative is a naive and cowardly worldview. Just like the Christian crusaders who pushed back against Muslim hordes in the 12th century, American crusaders will need to muster the same courage against Islamists today. Islamists and even mainstream Muslims use aggressive tactics to exploit American tolerance as utter weakness in order to achieve accommodations. We must not only tolerate Islam and Islamists, we must celebrate them, we are told. Hexit complained that Islamists happily exploit the view that celebrates Muslim immigration to seed the West with as many Muslims as possible. Trump still has the sauce. No one else could have made picks like these. Every selection is like drafting a kicker in the first round, but the kicker has a Wikipedia section titled Allegations and is also not really a kicker. Yeah. He's right. He's right. he's going after even a nuttier cabinet than even I could have assumed he would have gone after. Is it worse than you thought it was going to be first week wise? Seems like insanity is past even what you were expecting. No, I still think his top line agenda was going to be followed through on. I just didn't think he would also get nutty with it. I thought he would go for competence more than go for loyalty. And it seems like he doesn't care. He cares more about loyalty above all else. Like I thought he would find loyal, competent soldiers, and he did. To a certain degree, he did, right? He's still... Like Marco Rubio is loyalty plus competence. Okay. All of the neocon hawks that he's put into positions of power is loyalty plus competence. Israel ambassador, Mike Huckabee, that is not necessarily so much loyalty, but that's more so loyalty to Miriam Adelson. Okay. Tom Homan, loyalty plus competence, right? Pete Hegseth, on the other hand, just loyalty. Matt Gaetz, simple loyalty and control. So there's a lot of picks in there. The new borders are too. No, that's loyalty plus competence. Guys, Tom Homan was the border czar under Obama. Obama gave him a fucking medal, okay? Come on. There's a reason why I fucking shit on Obama's legacy all the goddamn time. The deporter-in-chief over here. He did that shit. Now, the difference between Obama and the way that he directed that fucking thumb versus Donald Trump and the ways in which Donald Trump this time around is going to direct that thumb are different. Obama still did not... Obama still was doing deportations directly at border interceptions rather than mass deportations of people that are living inside of the United States, right? There is a difference there. There's definitely a difference there. Tell that to my cousin. No, Obama did not hyper focus on internal deportations as much. Rather than give an unnecessary fucking olive branch to the reactionary right to soothe their bloodthirsty desires to implement a white nativist anti-immigrant agenda. So that's why he did border apprehension deportations, which was bad. Donald Trump also in 2016 expanded on that. I mean, here, this is from 2016. Yeah, meet the man White House has honored for deporting illegal immigrants. There it is. Homan is the Washington bureaucrat in charge of rounding up, detaining, and kicking illegal immigrants out of the country. as America's fight over whether the next president should build a wall on the Mexico border to keep migrants out or protect millions of them from deportation. Homan is actually hunting undocumented immigrants down right now, setting a strategy for 8,000 officers on the front lines. Look at the way that they wrote this article. Holy shit. Hunting them. But that was woke because Obama was doing it, remember. The way I present this to you is always liberals make things, liberals calcify the reactionary slant that this country is going down, and they normalize it and make it business as usual politics, and then Republicans take that and nuke it into orbit. Okay? That's always how it works as we ratchet towards fascism. And that's precisely what's going on here. Anyway, here's more Hegseth.
You're talking about Donald Trump. You're talking about a warrior, which leads me to your book, this new release, June 4th, The War on Warriors Behind the Betrayal of the Men Who Keep Us Free. Explain what all this is about, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I know you have a really loyal audience of patriots, many of which are from military families or have served themselves or just love the military. And they've seen what I've seen, and then I got to do a deep dive on it. Our military is at a crisis moment. That's the reason why the flag on the front of the book is upside down. It's a universal sign of duress. The Pentagon, our military, should be focused on meritocracy and lethality, on holding people accountable and maintaining.
Why didn't you vote for Kamala Harris? She said she was going to have the most lethal military. Well, I guess, like I said, the joy candidate should be joyful right now because we will have the most lethal military. You know what I mean?
Maintaining standards high. That's the military I was a part of. That's what the military that fights and wins wars. And starting mostly under Obama and now under Biden, social ideologues, political appointees have pushed social justice prerogatives into the military, and generals have let it happen, whether it's women in combat, whether it's climate change schemes, and we're pushing electric tanks right now, whether it's DEI or CRT or trans in the military. It's shocking. I interviewed dozens and dozens of actively serving men and women.
Right.
Most of them said they had experience with a trans soldier in their unit, which forces everyone what this